This is Gemara Menachos Daf Mem Tes, and we're holding on Mem Tes and Aleph. We are 2 lines from the top of the Amud. As we continue with the Kisvei Atzeres, says the Gemara, Tani Rabba Bar Chana Kamid Rav. Rabbi Chana taught in front of Rav, Kisvei Atzeres Sheshachtan L'Shum Elim. We have these kvasim of Atzeres, the lambs that were shechted for the sake of an ayil, a ram. Ksherim, but Amrli Rav. So responds Rav, Alu va'alu. Says Rav, they have due count towards the tzibur, towards the chiyuv that they have to bring the karbanis. Now we have to realize that this is a carbon sibor, the kifsei aseres, and therefore the Tanakama taught us it's kosher. It's a classical case of Shlei Lishma. This just brings us back to Zavachim world, Daf Beis, and therefore lo bailim lo alu le bailim l'shem chayva, and therefore it has to be brought again. But says Rav, no, that it's a carbon for the tzibur, and therefore it's going to work alu ve'alu. Rav Chisda says, Rav Chisda, Mistabra Milza de Rav. Why? In a case that he thought that what were they? They were rams, but he shechted them for the sake of Kavasim. Then it's misaver of Rav that what? It's alu l'shem chayva. Shari kvasim l'shem kvasim nishachtu. Because l'maisa b'shas shchita, what happened? They were kvasim l'shem kvasim. Says the Gemara, aval. However, kasavar elim ushachtan l'shem elim, that he actually messed it up. Lohi. Then in that case, it's not going to work. Why? Akira b'taos. Have akira, because when you uproot something, even though you did it by mistake, it's called an akira, and therefore this is not considered. Excuse me. Therefore, this will not be considered that carbon. It will not be alu lebaylim shem chayva. That is Rav Chisda saying in what case we go with Rav. V'Rabba amar akir b'taos. Lo yahavi akira. Says Rabba, no, you're right that you thought the wrong carbon, but was that your appropriate kavana? Did you mean to do that? It was one big toast, and therefore it's not going to be an akira, and therefore what? It's yes going to be a good carbon. Amar Rabba, says Rabba, 10 lines down. Almost vinan ashmaitin. I'll ask a kasha. HaKayanim shepiglu b'mikdash. Kayanim that brought a carbon be'oifen pigel. Machshava zara shloi lishma shloi l'shem ba'ilam. Moizidin. If it was ba'oifen mezid, if they did it on purpose, then chayavin. Hashay again, but if it was by mistake, then what? Peturin. Then they're going to be butter. Vitani Allah. And we learned on it, Pigulan Pegol. And we learned on it that their Pegol is indeed Pegol. And therefore the carbon is going to be carbon is going to be puzzle, even b'shaygig, meaning we have a shaylo whether they're chayiv or not, whether it was mezid or not. That's klape, their own chiyuv. That is whether they were over a deraisa. But you want to know about the carbon? Pigulan pigol, the carbon has the status of pigol, and it's not going to be a good carbon. Says the Gemara, Echidami, what is this case? If you're going to tell me it's a case where you knew that the carbon was a chatos, you only can eat for a day and a night, and and you had a kavana that it should be for a shlamim 2 days and a night. Says the Gemara, that is a form of mezid. So says the Gemara, you're right. You know what the case is? The case is that you thought that it was a carbon shlamim, and your kavana was it should be a shlamim. Your kavana was to eat it within 2 days and a night. However, lamaisa, it's not a shlamim. You thought it's a shlamim, your kavana l'shem shlamim, but lamaisa it's a chatos. Katani, pigulan pegel, and we said that what? That in this case, the pickle is indeed pegel. So Alma, what do we see? This is a classical case of Akira b'tois havoi. So what do we see? We see Akira b'tois have Akira. Kasha of the Gemara on Rabba. Amalei Abayo. No. Lo yalam the other the chatas he knew is the chatas. Become a kasha l'shem shlamim. Uba'omer mutter. It says the Gemara, this is not going to be as we thought, but rather the reason that's going to be called a shaygeg is because he thought it was mutter. But if he did it by mistake, then it would be different. Meaning, we're trying to bring a raya to Akira B'Taos. Says there's no Akira B'Taos. It's an Aimer mutter. He knew what the playing field was. He just thought it was okay. Says the Gemara. I says the Gemara, Masiv Rav Zera, Reb Shimon, Aimer, Kol Menachos, and Nikmusushal Lishman Kesheirois. Another kasha on Rabba says Reb Shimon and Igar Mincha that the Kemitza was performed Shalei Lishma is kosher, Valu L'Bailin L'Shem Chayva, She'ein HaMenacha is Doimers L'Zvachem, She'akoymes V'chayeves L'Shem Marcheshes. Why is it not the same? It's not the same because the Kemitza on a machvas, I'm sorry, shakoymetz, if you did a kemitza on a machvas, lushom marcheshes, 2 different types of carbon menachos that we learned at the beginning of the Masechta. Your actions prove that what? Shehi machvas, that it was a machvas. Chareva lushom belula. However, if the koyin mixed a dry carbon with a belula, with a carbon mixed with oil, then the actions prove that what? That it's really a dry carbon. You see what the carbon is, but this is only by a carbon mincha. However, says the Gemara, by Zvachim, you can't say this. Shchita achaz le'kulam, kabbalah achaz le'kulam, zicha achaz le'kulam. Meaning, by a mincha, there's something of myself, moichichim. You could see there's a difference within the carbon alain. The carbon itself, you could see a difference. However, by an animal, by a shchita, by a zrika, by a kabbalah, you cannot see the difference. And therefore, a behema that was on shalei lishma is possible, whereas a mincha is going to be kosher. Says the Gemara, you knew what you were doing wrong. Who cares that your actions prove what you're doing? So what? You were aikir of what it was. You thought it's a marcheshes and you were bringing the shom marchesh, but it was a machvas. That's where we're going to say because we see that in general, the diak is that what? Akira b'tos. She has to be an Akira. Amrle Abaye, Loilam the other machvasi. V'kakometz l'shem marcheshes. Really, the case was you knew what was going on. So you're telling me, wait, ki ma'aseh mochichin le'may have. Rava l'tamei tamar Rava, machshavot lo'i minkara, apostle rachmana, machshavot de minkara, lo'i apostle rachmana. There's an additional caveat, says Rava, on top of the classical meichzeh meichichim. Says Rava, machshava deloy minkara, that's where it's going to be pasul. But a machshava de minkara loy pasul rachmana. We continue with the Mishnah towards the bottom of Memtes Amud Aleph. Says the Mishnah, Timidim in makvinas amusafim. Continuing the theme of karbana, is part of them, or different ones being ma'akiv one another. Says the Gemara, the carbon talmud is not ma'akiv the musaf. V'lo ma'asivin makvin is that timidin. V'lo ma'asivin makvin zeh. Lo yikrivu keves b'boiker. Says the Mishnah, if you do not bring the tamid lamb in the morning, meaning the two halves are not dependent one upon another. Says Rav Shimon, this is only if you are an anos or a shaygeg. Avalim ayu ma'azidim velo yikrivu kavish v'boiker lo yikrivu ben arbayim lo yiktiru k'zeres v'boiker. Then lo yikrivu, excuse me. Avalim ayu ma'azidim, then lo yikrivu kavish v'boiker, then lo yikrivu ben arbayim if it was a mazid. Now we continue to the Ketairis. Lo yikrivu Ketairis v'boiker, you still kvi yaktir ben arbayim. Am Rav Shimon v'kula yisek kreva ben arbayim she'ein mechanchen es v'zech hazav elo b'Ketairis hasamim v'lo mizech ha'ila elo v'tamid shel shacher. So there was no Ketairis in the morning. V'lo yisek shach v'lachan abanim b'Shabbos v'lo yisek v'neir elo b'shiva neiraseh ben arbayim. So says the Gemara, let's dive in. Boi minei Rav Chia bar Ravin May Rav Chisda. Tzibor she'en lem temidim u'musafim ein ezem ehen koidim. A tzibor that does not have enough animals for both the tamid and the musaf, which one comes first? Hechidami, says the Gemara. Ilema temidim diyomei. If you're going to tell me the carbon tamid of that day, u'musafeh diyomei. Pshito, what's the shaila? Why is it bashit? Avada timidim adivalu. Why the classical rule? Tadir mekodosh. The reason is they got rid of the word mekudash over here, and rather, 1 second, I lost the place. No, the tadir mekodosh. Ella, you'll see what we're talking about in a moment on the last medium-sized line. Timidin de machar umoisafim de aina. Timidin adi fashkein tadir. Do we say today's tamid, tomorrow's musaf? Do today's, because tadir v'shein tadir kaidem. I don't know. Because the musaf is more kadosh. So which one should you bring? Amar le, says Rav Chisda on the first very wide line. Tini tua, I'll bring you a raya. Hatimidim in makvinas musaf, lo musaf makvinas hatimidim. V'lo is musaf makvinas hazeh. So ichidam ilim with this leivik ulakadem. If you're going to tell me that you have both karbanos, and the only shaila is which one comes first. That can't be. Vatani minayin shal yidavar koydin levtam shal yinar shachar. Tamal amarvar chalel ha oilav amarav oilav l'rishon ekshehei shows that it has to be the first carbon. Elab shita. So what is the case? You turn over to Memtasim Abeis, the last lay. The case is he does not have enough animals with the tamin and the musaf, and you have to choose. And zok the Mishnah, do whichever you want. The diyome, says the Gemara, that's only if it's lav diyome. Because says the Gemara, if you're going to tell me to carbon of that day, amai tadir makodesh tadir adif. Why? Then it should be pasha. It should be a case of tadir and makodesh because that day's carbon. So tadir wins. So alav de la machar vikatani ein makvin zazeh. From tomorrow, it's hamakiv al makiadadi nino. So what do we see? We see that when they're equal, neither gets priority over the other one. Says the Gemara, Amar le'Abaye, the Raya of Rav Chisda is no good. Loylan this leho lekadim. Really are handling about coming earlier. The kakashalach sheidavar kaidim mitzvah sheidavar kaidim. Aye, you want to know nothing should come first? Says the Gemara, not so fast. You're right. The tamid comes first, but just a mitzvah ba'almo. It's just a mitzvah that the tamid comes first. Tashima. Ein paychazin mishisha telaim hamevukarim b'lishkas hatelaim, where no less than 6 lambs that are examined in the lishkas hatelaim kidei l'sheves l'shabbos l'shnei yamim l'shnei yam tayvin shal Rosh Hashanah. That's why you need 6 lambs there altogether. Hey, Chidami says, you have a likarbana, he's tuva, have as many animals. Ela de leslay. Shema minas. What do we see? That what are we handling when you don't have? We're handling the tamid. Shema minas, says the Gemara. Timidim adifi. We see the Torah Tamid is more adif. Says more loy no raya. Loy lam dislay. V'hachi ka'amar ein baichasim. V'hachi ka'amar ein baichasim mishisha tzalayim. Hamvukarim lishas atzalayim dalid yami kodim ashchita. Anu, this has been Bagba. The Tani ben Bagba Baimer. Minayin the Talmud. How do we know that a Talmud shato and bikar dalid yamim kodim shchita? The Talmud, excuse me, I know the Talmud needs to check 4 days. Talmud loymar tishmeru lakrav li b'mayadai. Ulalanu oimer v'ilacham nishar zana arba'asa yom. Malalan ton bikar b'yam afkan kodim shchita. Afkan ton bikar barbayim. Kaidem Shchita. We'll stop over here. I'll pick it up from Ravina the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.